Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Michael Corr, Duro's CEO, to introduce our guests and kick off our webinar today.
Awesome. Thank you, Aphrodite. Welcome, everybody. I'm really excited to get in this conversation. It's a topic that I'm very passionate about, and I think it's very exciting, and a lot of great news in the industry recently about software for hardware and the best of breed approach. So first off, I'm Michael Corr, co-founder and CEO of Duro. We are the first truly out-of-the-box plug-and-play PLM system that promotes agile workflows for more progressive hardware teams. With me today, joining me is Karan Talati, CEO of First Resonance, and Jackson Lysick, the Technical Integrations Product Manager at First Resonance. And so during the webinar today, Karan and I are going to kind of get into what's happening in the industry today, why best of breed is a really good approach to building out your software workflow tech stack. And then Jackson's going to go through a live demo of our actual integration between Duro and First Resonance. So really excited about that. All right, welcome, Karan, Jackson. Thank you for joining us. Why don't you guys go ahead, give a little intro about who you are and what's going on.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thanks, Michael. It's great to be here with yourself and the Duro team. For everybody joining, thank you for taking the time this morning. I'm Karan Talati, CEO and co-founder of First Resonance. First Resonance builds a software platform called the ION Factory OS that helps manufacturers manage the very many complex interactions that happen in the day-to-day manufacturing process, everything from defining and getting accurate work instructions out onto the factory floor, collecting that data, managing issues and non-conformances on the quality side, as well as flowing over into the supply chain side, allowing factory operators to place purchase orders out, receive that inventory in, and then efficiently kit that inventory out and have traceability throughout. Of course, underlying all of this is a very powerful architecture that we'll talk about more, that allows us to integrate with great tools like Duro, as well as factory and increasingly, programmatic and connected factory workflow. So it's great to be here. Jackson, I'll let you introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Karan. Yeah, my name is Jackson Lysick. I am the technical product manager for integrations here. So, what we focus on really is integrations to other modern SaaS platforms like ERP systems, PLM systems, quality management systems, and the sort. Prior to my time at First Resonance, I was actually at a customer of First Resonance in the defense industry, working with the ION platform on a day-to-day basis on the manufacturing floor. So I got pretty intimate with how the product works, what some of the workflows are for, consuming material, building work instructions, and everything else. And then during my time there, I was sort of enamored, if you will, by, just the pure ability to automate with ION. I think that really speaks to how easy it is to sort of integrate between other systems as well. So, bolstered the skills and, working with the API and whatnot, and then wanted to come over and make a difference. So definitely excited to show you guys, what we've been working on and, talk about the importance of, having integrated platforms for your factory's software stack.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right, just to kick it off, what I want to just first talk about is, I think we're all aware there's been a resurgence, in my opinion, of new software for hardware tools. The software industry, and myself as an electrical engineer, having worked in it for 20, 30 years, the availability of software tools was pretty limited. And in the last 5 years or so, there's been an incredible and exciting spike in new products that are entering the market, different ways of approaching CAD, bill materials, MES, design, production management. What do you think is going on, Karan? Like, why is there this interest? Why is this resurgence? Like, why does it seem to be forming this best of breed approach?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Michael. You and I have had the opportunity to get started on, I think, what is a movement. What we're seeing, I believe, is a reflection of what's been going on for maybe 10, 15 years in software generally. It's just catching up to the hardware world. what used to be a very centralized, consolidated, monolithic approach at bringing digital technology into the factory to help the workflows move left to right, completely gets accelerated with the advent of things like the cloud and infinitely more storage and compute. And so solution providers are now possible, I think companies like ours, to solve problems much more efficiently and with a lot more productivity. So you see this burst of solutions coming online, and really this kind of unbundling of the traditional ISA 95 stack, just a very like tiered, there's the business, then there's the operational layer, and then the device layer, and that's it. And in many cases, in order for those layers to even interact, it would all have to be within the same monolithic provider suite, right? So you'd have to be all in on one software vendor, one large company to do everything in your factory. But of course, as we've seen microservices and an increasingly programmatic workflow come up, that there's much better way to do it, a much more nimble way to do it. And so it's really exciting to see all that unfold.
I agree. I think one thing that's unique about this new generation of tools is, I think it's an unspoken agreement that we're all going to be compatible with each other. And through either APIs or SDKs or just data models, like our products are designed intentionally to be compatible out of the box, with very little configurability or configurations required. May have extensive configurability, but not needed to just get started, right? And where certainly from my career, I, grew up in my professional career of buying, as you said, these very large monolithic products. And if I wanted to integrate them with other companies' products, or even within the same conglomerate's, product portfolio, it was often a very expensive and timely endeavor, which required, access to another third party who maybe had an integration, or consultants who had to build something for me, custom. And it was very intimidating and overwhelming. And it kind of just felt like a non-starter, especially, working predominantly in more startup world. We didn't have those resources, people or cash to be able to pay for those custom integrations. We ended up just falling back on those manual processes. And so it didn't feel like it was a properly set up environment to actually make things more efficient. In fact, it felt like the tools were not intentionally, but they were designed to make things less efficient. Mm-hmm. And required additional manual overhead to operate them in the way we wanted. Whereas I think that's what's unique about this new generation of products is it's the opposite. Like they're designed to be able to be set up and configured and interoperable immediately and get out of the way, so that engineers and operators, whomever, can actually focus on what they're trying to do with the software, not spending so much time actually configuring and operating and maintaining the software.
Right. Yeah, Michael, and I agree. And I think some of this is all also relatively new, even in the software world, the standardization of APIs, and the effect that has had on the digital world that we live in. So when you look at some of these consumer products, where you click one button and from that one button, it invokes another API, a payment gets processed, a big data analysis, runs and captures analytics. Like all of that is the magic of the standardization and these patterns. And it was a matter of time for this to catch up, and is now available in hardware, which is extremely exciting.
Yeah, no, it's very exciting. I think there's two catalysts that really unlock this. And so one is as you mentioned, just the proliferation of software tools and the models that the software industry came up with for how, software development processes and workflows and capabilities, and the whole, what I refer to as that agile renaissance. That model is now, tried and true and well tested and become prevalent for developing software. And I think a lot of hardware companies are starting to embrace those concepts and trying to bring them to their space. And what's enabling that, which I think is the second catalyst, is there's a new generation of culture of hardware engineers, electrical and mechanical manufacturing engineers, who understand those models more intimately and intuitively than certainly when I entered the workforce, right? It wasn't second nature for electrical and mechanical engineers to understand software principles. And so even if today they were trying to embrace some of these technologies, it might not have been as easy or intuitive to them. And so I think what's changed is a resurgence in interest in hardware by young tech talent, and with them are bringing these cultural associations of how to best build products. And so they're looking for these tools, right? And I think those were the two catalysts that really unlocked it. And then, as you said, the standardization of APIs, it's not like an IEEE and ISO standard. It's just like basic, cloud processes and APIs and RESTful or GraphQL unlock a lot of barriers. So as I said before, I felt like there are too many barriers for someone who had an idea, who wanted to manipulate a PLM or a CAD or an MES system. It was too cumbersome or obtuse to how to even do that because it wasn't available to them. But now, because all of these, First Resonance and Duro and many of our partners are API first, there is no barrier. You just got to get access to the API, and anyone with an idea is like, hey, I got an idea how I will manipulate the code, or I got an idea how I want to add a plugin to that product. And it's spawning this creativity, which I think is compounding, and why, in my opinion, why we're seeing such an increase in velocity in new software for hardware companies, because all those barriers are gone.
Yeah. Yeah, Michael, I think the way that you're describing it, it makes me think of, for a lot of the folks that are on the call here that have manufacturing and hardware backgrounds, you're familiar with the concept of design for manufacturability. And one of the underlying things there is this advent of interchangeable parts. And we think about, the Industrial Revolution and what happened there. One of these innovations was interchangeable parts. And that's true in manufacturing and hardware. The standardization of, thread sizes and some of these other things, you think about what has happened in the physical world to allow us to create the world around us, the physical world around us, and the standardization of some of these things like thread sizes, GD&T, et cetera, and what we actually had in software up until just recently. Very clunky, not interchangeable. If you use this thing, then you have to use this, and if you want to try to swap in another piece, well, you're out of luck. And forget about customizing it to your own business purposes. The fact that the software world brought along some of these principles and the standardization of things like REST and GraphQL kind of APIs, we now have the ability to have interchangeable digital parts in the factory. And I think that is, absolutely going to be a profound change to how these factories work. It's not just the physical elements that are now interchangeable. The digital parts are too. And I think those compound, which is, I think that this decade ahead is going to just see massive productivity and efficiency gains as a function of these very simple principles that we're talking about here.
I agree with that, which I think gets us to the main topic. Is it enables customers to pick and create this best of breed tech stack, right? So I think that too, that vernacular, the concept of a tech stack, that has been a traditional term in the software industry, and it's now just starting to permeate into the hardware industry. I'm hearing some of our customers and some of yours using that term, hey, I'm building my tech stack of software for hardware tools. What should I be using? I need something for revision control. I need something for task management. I need something for build management. And they're thinking even more of this plug and play architecture, more so than I've had in my experience in the past, where it's always just been, okay, which conglomerate am I going with? Am I a PTC company? Am I a Siemens company? And I'm going to get the products that come from their portfolio, which often comes, well, powerful products comes with a lot of limitations for adapting to their own custom workflows. And I think having this more plug and play architecture of this new generation of products allows companies to more seamlessly build out the entire workflow or tech stack that best suits their needs.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? How can companies, pick their tools? Like, what should they be looking for? Like, what's the best way to approach this problem?
Yeah, Michael, you and I both kind of briefly touched on some of these, but I think it's a good time to actually talk about, just that, what we've discovered in making our tools interchangeable and flexible and scalable. I think that's another part of that is like, being able to swap out blocks and scale those blocks up and down as the need goes, and making sure that the tools in the stack are one, functional, right? Able to perform the function, the job to be done, the thing that you need to get done. You alluded to a few of these, manage my part configuration, things like manage good work instructions and up-to-dateness of those, manage my quality management system, so on and so forth. So first, just making sure that you have the right functions, and no tool is going to be perfect. There's always going to be trade-offs. And so just making sure that you're hitting the right 80-20 for your needs, because that rest of that 20% ought to be thought about and not just over relied on a big provider, but rather thought about in terms of how do I really build out that stack. And so to get the interfaces right there, I think the next thing there is this API by default, right?
Yep.
It's not something that was bolted on to a piece of software later, or something that a tool that you were using in your previous career or two, you want to use again, and you talk to the vendor there, and they're like, yeah, we have an API coming this year. That's a big red flag. That means that this interfaceability side of what we're talking about, the importance of that interface, is an afterthought and something that's being bolted on. Whereas, we do have this amazing benefit of an entire generation of tools, and even some of the old providers that have been around for a while, don't get me wrong, even they are not just bolting these APIs on, but they're actually retooling. And those are the types of tools that you want to be looking for as interface by default.
I agree. And you reminded me of one of my favorite things of working at Duro is when I find a customer of ours where it's not even a junior level engineer, like a younger person, but a more senior person telling me that they took our API and like hacked it to do something they wanted to do to interface with some legacy product and workflow they have. Like, that gets me so excited and I didn't even know about it, right? Like, they didn't have to ask for permission. Like, they weren't like a lot of tech support. It's like, they were just telling me, hey, look what I did one night. I used your API and I built this elaborate collaboration with another tool or to, work with our workflow. Like, that's exactly what I feel is changing in the culture of hardware teams. It's like these engineers, these operators, even these managers understand what's possible now. And like, again, when I was an operator and using these tools, like, even if I wanted to do something, I never would have thought that'd be possible to get access to an API from these product providers, or that I'd be able to do anything on my own without paying some exuberant licensing fee or heavy consultant fees. And I think that's what's changing in the culture. The fact that products like resurgence and Duro are API first, and our buyers, our customers are looking for that and looking to expand upon what we already offer. And I think that's not only the power in and of itself of being able to integrate products more efficiently, but I truly feel like that's a key enabler to creativity and innovation, right? And then maybe they get some idea and like, oh my God, here's another software for hardware product I think is missing from the entire, ecosystem. Let me jump into the fray and let me offer something. I've got an idea of how to manipulate a BOM. I want to add more value to this community. It's now possible to do that, where I feel like it wasn't possible at all, or much more difficult to do that, even as recent as 5 or 8 years ago. And that's the shift we're seeing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to get to, conscious of time now. I'm really excited, for Jackson to give a demo, and he'll walk you through, starting in Duro, going through a change order event, and how it integrates to first resonance.
Right. Yeah. Let me go ahead and share my screen, get into it. Yeah. So I'm going to have both the platforms up sort of in a side by side to show the effects. And then also, one of the big key topics here, and I think Karan and Michael were talking about it earlier, was making this barrier to entry to connector tools much, much more low, right? So what we've done with the integration and with the proliferation of modern iPaaS tools. So iPaaS tool is like the sort of like the tool set that you use to connect between these two API based tools. Is we've been successful in actually putting the integration tool directly into a window in the application. So it gives you a lot more visibility and configurability into your actually your integration, instead of having to reach out to your consultant to ask what had happened. With a little bit of training and with a little bit of guidance, you as a manufacturing engineer or a supply chain person, or even a supervisor or technician, can go into the integration and understand where things are potentially breaking down or where things are different between the two systems. So this is the ION platform for those of you who haven't seen it in the past. I'm actually in the integrations tab, which is basically a view into the integration space, like I said before. I'll start this by looking at like our parts library. So this is sort of the downstream record of all of the parts available to your production teams and your supply chain teams to go out and procure material, build material, establish bills of materials, and do the execution related activities that you would do on a normal in a normal manufacturing environment. So ION has its own library of those parts that are ready for production. The beauty in a platform like Duro is obviously the UI is very slick and easy to use, and it's really comfortable to get a hold of. But Duro is sort of where your your engineering teams are controlling their processes for release. So this is the Duro platform. I've been working on this bearing assembly as a mechanical engineer. I'm changing a couple things about it. So I put in some of the lead time information, the unit cost. I've put in some product related data like the mass of this thing. Down below, I've actually established what some of the materials that go in to make this assembly are, along with their quantities and their level. So as you can see in this particular assembly, there's 4 BOM items. They each have their own quantities associated with them. So imagine me as the mechanical engineer. I've gone through, I've linked this out to my CAD software. I've pulled in this assembly, and now I'm actually ready to release this to production, because maybe I actually want to go out and start procuring some of these or building some of these to do testing on them, to ensure that they're working for our product line. So I've made the changes already. I think I've changed some of the quantities on these parts. But what I'd like to show you before I
Jackson,
do is
just
sorry,
before you jump in, if just to show the users, if you can show them the built-in diff tool. So on the upper right in the red triangle, excuse me, in the history, the clock right next to it, yeah. So you can compare revisions, and you can see exactly what's changed between those revisions. So you can see the changes that Jackson made.
Right. Yeah, so I changed the quantity from 12 to 8 on a particular BOM item. And having that diff is really key to understand what had changed, especially if there are multiple engineers working on this particular assembly at any time. Before I move on, Michael, is there anything else that you wanted to highlight on this page?
No, that's great. You can go ahead and close.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so the red triangle here is an indication that something has changed, and that they're going to ask me to go through the formalized change order process. And for those of you that don't know, the change order process is that formalized release process. So now that I'm saying it's ready, I want to maybe get some input before I push it to the downstream systems or whatnot. Before I do that, actually, I'm going to hop back over to ION. And just show you that none of these parts actually exist in the system. So this 999, 4 zeros and a 6 part doesn't exist in the library today. And you can actually search for that. I believe it's going to be here. So the 992 part does, but the 99906 part does not. Nor do any of the BOM components here exist. So I'm actually going to go through the formal change order process in Duro by clicking on the red triangle, adding this to a change order. There's a few different types of change orders: engineering change orders, manufacturing change orders, and document change orders. Engineering change orders are probably the most common, although Michael, you might have some more detail into that in particular.
Yeah, you're right. Engineering change orders are the most common. Typically, we guide customers. ECOs are appropriate for form, fit, or function changes. MCO, manufacturing change orders, are usually typically used for process changes. And then documentation change orders, kind of a catch-all. So if it's anything from adding data sheets to fixing a typo, the document change order lets you keep track of more minor revision changes.
Right. So in this particular case, since I made some changes to the bill of materials, and I may have changed some of the actual assembly attributes, I'm going to go with an engineering change order. And I'm going to give the change order a name. I'm just going to call this bearing release, and then give it today's date. Potentially, there might be some schema that your business chooses for naming this, but that's what I'm going to do for today. I'm going to make sure that I select the correct assembly, and then I want to include the children components in this as well. So, the bearing is what the bearing assembly is what I'm actually releasing, but along with the subcomponents if there had been any changes to them as well. So including all of those in my change order, I'm going to submit this for an approval. So now I have to go through the approval process. So you can establish certain guidelines for who is going to approve these parts. I'm sure there's some workflows within Duro, based on the part type or on specific attributes of the part. You can have particular people within your business take a look at those.
Yeah, you can apply different templates, and the templates can be based on different workflows you have established. So it will automatically add approver lists, notification lists, and even approval types. You can even have mandatory templates, so you can have it enforced either for consistency or just to make sure that no one deviates. Where if you submit certain characteristics of components, whether they're in prototype or production, you can enforce specific templates to be implemented that can't be editable. And so it drives simplicity and consistency. A lot of people look for.
Yeah, that flexibility is really important, especially if you have a quality critical product, as I know some of our customers do, where you want specific eyes on the product before you go ahead and release that. Or at least that's been my experience with it in the past.
Exactly.
So here's the sort of the approval screen. I am the only approver listed on here in this case, just to sort of speed up the process here. I have the ability to sort of approve, reject, and close this particular change order. One thing that I'll note, on top of the proliferation of the API and sort of the importance of it, is this idea of like the event-driven integrations. So both Duro and Ion have this idea, what we call a webhook, which is actually, whatever is going on in the system, you can actually listen for specific events that happen. I've gone in the background and I've established it's a very simple process, and Duro makes it very easy. But you can set up a webhook to listen for a specific event. The webhook that I set up was on change order approval. So anytime something is approved, it's going to take a list of product and components that were put onto that engineering change order. And then those approved products will be brought into the integration. So I'm going to go ahead and press approve. I'm going to throw in a comment. And then I'm going to press approve. Okay, so like I said before, the integration is configured directly within the Ion platform. You can actually go and see that integration is running. So like I said, I've set up the webhook to push to that internal iPaaS server. I'm not sure a lot of the details are as important, but what it's doing now is it's running through the logic that we set up and is pushing those parts into Ion. So if there was ever an issue, we have advanced monitoring that can be set up on the Ion side to let you know if something hadn't gone through properly. But in this case, it did, so we got the green circle. Once you trust the system, obviously you don't have to check this as much, and you can hope or expect that your parts will show up automatically within your parts library.
Or hardly ever. If I may just add, what Jackson just showed there, very, very powerful, because when it comes to, some of this event-driven structure, the APIs connecting, people, in the hardware operation may just expect it to work. And that's exactly, how it works. But when things do, appear funky, to be able to quickly diagnose and debug right from within the workflow is a very powerful capability that Jackson just showed here. So that's an important thing to note, is that this is really being able to peel back or open up the hood and see what's going on. But in most cases, it just works, and so Jackson will show that here in a moment.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely, good clarification, right? I'm trying to just be transparent with everything that's happening, and I think, like you said, peeling back the layers, in the past, especially with working with consultants, they have this sort of fabricated barrier to understanding what's actually going on in their integration, and oftentimes want you to reach out to them, or set you up with some sort of TNM to get the lowdown. So we've basically broken down those barriers to allow people to go in and see. But he's right, in most cases, like, this is going to show up as a successful execution, and now my parts are in my library. So you can see the bearing assembly now exists along with all of the subcomponents for that particular assembly. And now I can click into this component and see that the bill of materials has a version, an embalm version of 1. You've got 4 materials on here, each with the correct quantities. And this part is now available to go plan with using the Ion auto plan engine. You can execute purchase orders against any of these components or the assembly itself. You can go out and build this using our procedures and runs modules. And now your floor has the confidence to know that it's working with the right assembly, right? You don't want to work with previous revisions or get down the line and realize that a component hasn't migrated properly, which I believe is really one of the big key benefits of the integration, is that you're not going to miss or use the incorrect parts, right? Especially within the industries that we're working in, your engineering teams are moving so quickly. Your production teams are sort of on the end of that bullwhip, if you must. And having the systems talk to one another takes a huge load off of actually the communication between those two teams, and instead of waiting for someone to manually upload those parts when they're there for you when they're ready.
Yeah, if I can interject from my own personal experience, in my career, I worked predominantly with manufacturers in China and Shenzhen, and we didn't have anything like this, right? And even if we had a PLM system, it certainly wasn't connected to their MES or their factory management, and it was all done through email. Even if we did put it in PLM and gave them access, they'd still have to manually download it, and often they would even just circumvent that and say, just email it to me. And so it was literally like you're just sending it and crossing your fingers that they grabbed the right email, or that the right person was on their email distribution list and saw it. And you have just no idea what happens. And so the fact that not only the simplicity of setting this up, how quick it is to integrate these two tools, but the fact that you have this digital link and traceability of exactly what's transferring between the systems, it's incredibly comforting. One of the largest contributors to manufacturing mistakes is just simple human error of grabbing the wrong information. And this just completely eliminates that, like just takes it right off the top of possibilities of what could go wrong in manufacturing. And, I get jealous of our customers that they get access to this capabilities now. Like I'm not developing hardware, working in the trenches like I used to. And like this stuff, it just makes me cry, like how much better the world has become for being able to have access to this kind of content.
Absolutely. So before I jump to sort of the configuration, was there anything else that you wanted to highlight with this integration, Karan or Michael?
No, so please go ahead.
Okay.
Great.
So the one thing that I wanted to go over really quickly is just how easy it is to configure these integrations. So like I said before, you basically have a window now into all the integrations that are available to you and your business. The configuration of these integrations is much simpler now. With the advent of the APIs and authorization codes and API keys, it's much simpler to actually set these things up. We have a lot of this detailed in our manual as well if you have questions. But I think this process can be followed by anyone at your business in most cases. So I'll go through. This is the integration marketplace that we have available to us in the ION application. I'll type in Duro, which is the integration that we were looking at before. So it should bring me to that familiar page. When I'm actually wanting to go set this thing up, I can, in your application, it'll say configure, but since I've already set this up, I'll just show you, what it looks like to reconfigure. So I'll press next. And this is actually where you set up, the values that you get from your system for the actual connections. So I think, the ION API keys can be pulled directly from our API. So with a simple query made to your own API, you can create the API keys and then pull those directly into this connection. So I just copy and pasted those from a query that I had earlier. You set up the environment that you're working in. You do pretty much the same thing. Actually, Duro makes it a little bit simpler. You go over to the Duro application. You can go to your account settings and then to your integrations, and then you press Get API Key. You can copy and paste that now into the integration here in ION. So it's a lot of just copying and pasting up to this point. There is one step where you actually have to go and configure the webhook that I talked about before. And it's as simple as putting in the URL for the particular integration that you're setting up, which actually is really easy to pull, and I'll show you that in a second. Some of the other configuration that's important is, setting up your revision schemes between the two systems so that they know what types of revisions to push when they're creating new parts. And then here's a really key component as well for the configuration. We now have the ability to push over custom attributes and the native attributes between the two systems. So all you have to do is make sure you know the name of the attribute in each system, right? If I'm looking in Duro, for example, the part number, the component part number is referenced by CPN. In ION, this is referenced by part number, right? There's a little bit of syntax here, but you can get these values fairly easily, both through the API and in the manual, it calls out a lot of these as well. So these are pre-configured, so you won't have to mess with the native attributes too much. But say you have, some cost codes or some, account-related configuration, minimum inventories, one of the custom attributes that we have or is important to us is sort of the weight of that part. You can set these custom attributes up both on the Duro side and on the ION side through your organization settings very easily, and then you map them between the two systems. So the left side is the ION name, the right side would be the name of that particular attribute in Duro. So the power here is really, you can configure this and reconfigure this as many times as you want, especially with, as quickly as our businesses are changing, you often have new attributes that you want to pull over into, in between the systems. So all I have to do is go in and add a new value, type in the name on one side and the other, and then press finish. And now the integration is configured. And all you have to do is test that, the nuts or that the bits and bytes are pushing over. So that's really the power in my eyes of having it directly within the application.
Awesome. Thank you, Jackson. Yeah, forget how easy it is. We've had many customers compliment us as well as I'm sure you guys too of how quickly they've been able to integrate our products. And it's funny. It's almost expected to be that simple in the software tool stack, and the hardware industry is just catching up that it doesn't have to be so hard. It doesn't have to be such an ominous task to be able to integrate two different products and have them seamlessly exchange data very quickly, and to be able to self-manage it as well. As you correctly identified, Jackson, like things evolve. You don't want to have to call a consultant, or pay another change order fee to, some contractor and have them make an update that just could be a 5-minute update that you guys could do yourself. Really powerful stuff. Awesome. Well, so I know if there's any questions from the audience, Aphrodite, or I can talk for hours about this with Karan, but
I'm sure. Yeah, please, if you have questions for Karan, Michael, or Jackson, please put them in the Q&A. We'll happily answer them. I don't see any open questions at the moment.
Okay. Well, it's kind of digging into this a little bit deeper with the demo. Like, what are you guys seeing? How customers are taking advantage of this? Where's the things that you think this integration can go? Like, what's the future look like? What's now that we have these building blocks of interoperability between Duro and First Resonance or even beyond? Like, what do you see as the future? Like, what does this unlock?
I think building on the demo, Jackson shared how easy it is to take a new part that's configured and gone through a workflow in Duro and get that over into Ion, and everybody saw how quickly that part moved over, and then from there being able to purchase it, being able to create a procedure and execute a run against it, etc. That's all amazing. I think what we're starting to see in how customers are really understanding not just the API, that the API capability of flowing data one direction, but this event-driven capability that Jackson was talking about. And one thing that we're particularly excited about is taking that in manufacturing in-field data and sending it back up to design. And so, I was at SpaceX for a number of years, and for those that are here know, one of the huge things that SpaceX has gotten right with respect to its ability to scale as quickly as it did and continue to iterate and innovate on the rocket was, constantly learning from the data through multiple phases of the product development lifecycle, sending that back up a phase or multiple phases to continue to iterate. The reality of the manufacturing and hardware industry is very much a waterfall style development workflow where you have to get the first step right to get the second step right and the third step right. And if any one of those has a problem, whether you get the wrong dimensions on a mold you're making, or the wrong parts ordered, or something else like that, you either lock it in and live with it until the next product cycle, or you're SOL. So the ability for these systems to not only flow data from one to the other, but also back is, I think, an incredibly powerful capability and something that we're looking forward to building out further with Duro, in fact.
Absolutely. And you picked up on something that I'm very passionate about, is this concept. It's a pretty much commodity in software, CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment. And it really is built on that premise of the full feedback loop, the full feedback cycle. And exactly. So right now, what we demonstrated is more unidirectional, but now imagine an operator, either manually or even the software system itself, can identify quote unquote feedback or mistakes or issues found, through the power of Ion, and it can feed it back into Duro by creating like a change request or submitting, changes directly into the Duro content. And now you've created that immediate feedback loop. And so the design team can very efficiently and quickly get direct feedback based on what they push down into Ion back from those operators, right? Now you've created the full feedback loop, which was the essence of what the agile workflow is all about. It's about having these quick iterative, cycles of design, tests, review, design, test, review, so that you can most efficiently get to a better place much faster versus the traditional waterfall effect, which is very unidirectional. and very manually intensive to get that feedback, that has traditionally been used in the hardware ecosystem. So I agree with you that bidirectionality is going to be, it's going to be huge.
Hey, Michael, really quick, is there anything on the Duro roadmap, like, maybe an ECR object that can help with that sort of bidirectional flow?
Yeah, so we have a couple different takes on that. So for those that are unaware, so ECR is engineering change requests, and so traditionally that means someone, whatever the origination is, says, "Hey, I've identified a need to make a change to an established baseline," and they submit a request, and then a workflow gets established on how that change request is processed. A couple things. So first off, we've also found that in almost all modern engineering companies, software, hardware, they use a product like Jira or Linear to manage the day-to-day tasks. Like once an engineering change review is reviewed and processed, like there's still work that has to be done. And that work is still tracked in a tool like Linear or Jira. And so Duro feels like the concept of a formal engineering change request is almost becoming antiquated. And it's becoming replaced by these task management tools. And so adding a separate step of a formal ECR, and so to be clear, like, we're not against the concept of requesting changes. We just feel that the legacy ECR process is now becoming inefficient and actually slowing it down because putting another step in the way. The ECR in most companies, certainly that we talk to, ultimately gets turned into a Jira ticket. So why not just go straight to the Jira ticket? Right. And the same thing in the software industry, if a manager or developer has a change request, they don't submit a request Jira ticket, they just create a Jira ticket. And then that ticket has its own life based on the company's policies. And so that's Duro's approach specifically to ECRs, where you can link to your Jira or Linear accounts and have those permeate into Duro components. And that's available today. And so through our API today, certainly ION can create change orders, draft change orders directly. And so we'll actually pretty easily, we can extend that so where you can turn that into a templated Linear Jira ticket as well. So actually, I like that idea a lot. So we'll get on that this afternoon. Any other questions, Aphrodite? Kind of approaching time anyway, so
yeah, let's wrap it up since we're getting close to well, we've gone past the time, but it was a great discussion. So
yeah.
Thank you so much to Karan, Michael, and Jackson today. It was a really awesome demo, so appreciate that. If you would like to speak to us, please reach out. We're at marketing@durolabs.co, and then Karan or Jackson, if you want to give the best way to reach you.
Absolutely, yes. So thank you, everybody. As Aphrodite mentioned, thank you for joining the webinar. Really great conversation. I can't wait to see what we do next. This is just the building blocks and the foundation of this highly interoperable system. If you want to learn more about us at First Resonance, you can visit our website at firstresonance.io. Hit the contact button there, and you'll get in touch with our team. From the sales side or the product side, wherever you need to get to, we'll get you there quickly. So. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Karan. It's always a pleasure talking with you. Jackson, great job on the demo. I think you demoed a Duro better than I could have. So
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Clear you've spent some good time in the product. Thank you, everybody. Please don't hesitate to reach out. If any questions or you want to get involved or have ideas for other integrations or how we can continue to evolve this current solution. Really excited to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you.